not have an ability to sell, it's crucial. Everybody sells. So engineers need to understand that. They need to sell their ideas. They need to sell their projects.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Elias, what's up, man? Dude, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So, CTO, co-founder, Drift. What's the scale of Drift today? Like, where are you guys at?
We have grown very quickly, right? I think, David always likes, my partner, David Cancel, obviously.
Dude, such a stud.
Because of him, I'm here.
Yeah.
I think that we have grown, it was 2 of us.
Yeah.
Then
And this is 5, you just hit the 5-year.
We just hit 5 years on LinkedIn. Yeah. It was, all of the sudden people are congratulating me and I'm like,
what did I do?
What happened? 5 years? Time flies. We basically have grown, I think this is fairly public. I guess you can see this on LinkedIn or something, but it's 2 of us. I think it was like, we hover around 10, 18.
Yeah.
And then we went to 45, 150, now 300.
Oh, crap.
You
hired 150 people in a year.
In a year. That's hypergrowth.
Hence the name of your conference, the book,
Absolutely.
Hypergrowth. What have you, so managing, I'm assuming engineering. So prior VP of Eng at HubSpot, so they bought Performable. I think we first met, was it at you guys were doing an event? David, I know, invited me to speak. I was lost. They were trying to find me on the street. I jumped out of my car. Somebody parked my car. I don't know. It was like you guys ran a meetup back then. It was I think it was while you guys were doing Performable. Do you remember this? It was
Absolutely.
Like
I wonder if it was our party too. I mean, David has this, in his blood, this marketing essence and like always about events, always about creating momentum. So yeah, I definitely remember.
Yeah, this was like
7, 8
2009.
years ago.
Yeah, this is 2009.
You go way back.
And and I remember back then. And you also did Lookery. Lookery was with him as well?
Absolutely.
So Lookery, Performable with Josh, and then HubSpot, and then Drift, and always on the technical side.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I definitely can flex. I can do a lot of operations as well.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time. David is outside, external face. He's better looking, and I'm inside.
I don't know, man.
And so it definitely
we're gonna do a look off. I think you do okay with that, man.
A lookery. And so definitely I get to spend a lot of time. He's on marketing. He's on finance. On fundraising, product. I mean, the visionary, right?
Yeah,
and I'm more kind of like executing with the engineers, with the product leaders, as well as I do like sales too.
Okay.
So I spend a good amount of time in sales and recruiting.
Okay. Well, I know you've written a lot about culture, and it's a big part of what I love following along with David's thoughts. The stuff he reads and he tweets is an incredible learner. Building an engineering team, at HubSpot scale, I didn't realize they acquire Performable. They get David who leads product. They get you that leads engineering. That was I think an incredible acquisition for them and for you guys, right? And you did 5 years there?
3,
and then built out the Dublin office. I know you spent time. You guys called it the Dub Spot, which was unique because back then I think most companies from the Valley or others that opened up here, they didn't really hire a lot. Like Google had 2,000 people, but only like 200 were engineers.
Yes.
But you guys made the decision to do full stack.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and have product owners and whatnot.
Product owners, and we believe that when you open offices. We believe in geographical distribution, but we like to have the office own a single product.
Okay.
And so we wanted them to own something because we like to build squads that have product leadership, product management,
stack.
Designers, as well as the engineers.
That way it's not like this is the place where these type of people
Exactly.
I was discussing with a friend recently, and the whole idea of a labs area is kind of weird because the people that work on labs are the cool kids, and then there's the people that fixing bugs and stuff. It just doesn't create a great culture.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to, I find fascinating about what you guys have done, because to grow that high and still produce and build product and get results and outcomes, it's really down to the people. So how do you think about building, especially on the technical side, right? A lot of founders are, in my world, predominantly like marketing or business focus. When you look at building an engineering culture, what are some of the core tenets that you look at to make sure that that's the strong?
I think it's really about momentum. It's really has to be about speed, because what happens is that we have this natural tendency to just be more careful, be more thoughtful, plan, prepare, worry, right? Of like whether this is right, whether it's done correctly, whether it's architected, whether it's going to scale.
Because you guys get the call if the thing goes down.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, but I think in general, humanity likes to
they're
be careful.
Yeah.
Not as risk, not risk takers. And so I think that's really the essence of Drift. Is about speed. It's about being biased for action and role modeling that. I think that's now that you just made me think about that, is that in my career, I go back and forth in that I will code, I will build, and then I start leading, and I stop coding, and then start over. And so it's just, up and down.
Has that been true for each company? You've always started with the code? Like
Absolutely.
You wrote the code?
Yeah.
Cool.
And so at Lookery, small team, Performable, the same. I was, building it, and then I would spend most of my time selling, right? Yeah. And we had sales reps, and I had to be there, helping them sell it,
like a sales
and supporting,
engineer,
and exactly in every way. And then you just can't code because you're like booked solid all day long. And so the same is with HubSpot. Built a lot of the code initially. I think I focused on the email CMS product. Those things were the first thing we needed to rebuild, because we didn't have that part of the product, that marketing automation, be able to send the email stuff that we had started at Performable.
Yeah.
And at the end, about 150 in the organization, just in the product organization.
Really?
When we left, and then I couldn't code anymore. So I remember writing a blog post when I first started realizing that pattern, and I said why I don't code anymore. And when we went to start Drift, guess what?
Started
coding again. And so if you look at my GitHub, I'm proud of it as an engineer. Like when people say,
it's pretty rare that the fact that you're saying you also sold, because to have a co-founder that can code, that was involved in the product, talk to the customer, be able to give perspective on, is this easy? Is this hard? I
think that everybody should be a learner and should push themselves. Not have an ability to sell, it's crucial. Everybody sells. So engineers need to understand that. They need to sell their ideas. They need to sell their projects.
Especially for hiring.
Technology.
Projects,
If you want to create something and have people use it in the whole world, you got to learn how to sell.
Well, how do you look at selling? Just in general, what's your approach to selling? What are the different parts to it? Is this formal, or is just you've just learned intuition now, or
It's both.
Yeah.
I think they're doing a lot more reading about it and understanding. David is always pushing books on me, and so Cialdini and all this kinds of books, right?
Yeah.
Persuasion, just understanding. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
And so I love those types of books. I think everything is selling, right? If you want to write some code, if you want to convince your manager to work on a specific project.
How do you do, because that's one that people are wondering, how do you sell internal? I get when customer has a pain and I'm trying to figure out what their challenges are and really connect some emotional connection there. How does somebody sell internally? How would you coach your new engineering hires to sell up ideas?
It's like you do with everything, right? It's like you have to present the pain. You have to understand it. You have to show people you care. Do you want to help? You want to show them that they don't have to worry, that you're going to maintain whatever it is that you're building, and you're not just abandoned.
Giving them confidence.
It's I'll take care of this, plus I'm also going to deliver this.
So it's doing all the things you normally do in a sales conversation. Make sure that you've got that when you do present the idea, and at the end of the day, what they're buying is that confidence that it's the right decision, that it's not gonna make them look stupid.
Yes.
It's not gonna cause unnecessary risk.
Why have that tension?
Yeah.
It needs to be just as subtle, as delicate as somebody trusting you and giving you their money, right? Yeah. It's like if you're the engineering leader at a company, you have worries, you have concerns, you have timelines, you have very few resources. Nobody ever has the amount of resources.
It's the same thing. It's money. It's a resource. Yeah,
it's everything. It's the same. Yeah. And so the problem is if you're an engineer and you just present it as, I need to do this, I'm right, and this is the right thing.
Which is I feel like I call it mad dog mentality amongst technical leaders. I had a CTO and he was just cold, dude. He was just and I was just like, man, add a little bit of compassion, empathy, and you're going to get a lot more.
Exactly.
I love that you that's something you encourage. Like you said, role modeling. How does your product or engineering, well, let's just talk engineering. How does the team structured today? What's the different areas of the business if somebody's trying to like figure out where the, like at scale, what does this look like?
Yes. The way that it works is that we have kind of like these ratios, this kind of like they're laws. You can't violate them. And,
Okay.
and everybody wants to change them all the time. But
Such as?
3-person teams.
Okay.
And you can combine 2 3-person teams into a squad. So 3 engineers,
Yeah.
all 3 have to be codings,
Okay.
right? So you have a tech lead, two engineers that are kind of reporting to that person.
Okay.
Not full managerial responsibilities because that's overwhelming.
Yeah. It's not, they're not talking about
exactly.
career stuff. No.
Career stuff, no. But it's like that day to day.
Yeah.
And the person that leads and makes the
Prioritizing,
decisions.
backlog, all that
Exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
So you have 2 teams of 3, product manager to 6 engineers.
Okay.
So, but that product manager has to be fixed to those 2 3-person teams.
Okay. So that doesn't change.
That cannot change. You cannot have a product manager, meaning when I say it can't change, it's never perfect.
Yeah.
We're always behind one product manager, or we have
There's
or
some
we're
cultural
down,
shit, like some
the stuff like that. But we never be like, okay, let's have this product manager that we agree will have 12 engineers. No.
Too many.
It's too many, right? And so because of the pace at which we produce,
Yeah.
maybe in a different organization.
Is this like the pizza concept?
Yes,
that-
similar.
yes.
And so basically I have 8 people, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have a product manager, a product designer to those 6 engineers. That's
Yeah.
another, 1 to 6.
Okay.
1 to 6 product designer, 1 to 6 product management. And then we attach a support person. So from the support
Wow.
organization.
For research and
It's the
post-deployment?
voice of the customer,
Yeah.
right? And so what happens is we have this structure that every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, the team presents to the VP of engineering. It used to be to me, but now it's presenting to them and the VP of product what the team is doing.
Yeah.
And that person from support is there at that meeting. And there's a slide that says top 3 issues that team owns from the support perspective. That person
Like
has
that they're
the
going to
voice.
resolve?
Yeah, they have to resolve them.
Okay.
So I get to see it. So there's never like a
Misalignment.
oh no, but it's like people from sales or from other places or success. Oh, they're not listening to us.
Yeah.
No. It's like, what do you
Yeah.
mean? It's like we know what the customers are saying.
These are the tickets.
These are
This
the
is what they
tickets. These are
said.
the top 3 issues. Not just the tickets.
Yeah.
We track that as
Yeah.
well, but these are the issues that a support person is empowered to say to us. This to me is you guys are not. It just keeps surfacing over
So
and over.
most people would assume the product manager would own the voice of the customer, but you're saying it's important to have somebody that's
Compliments.
to give them the information, to go looking at stuff, to give them the specific nuance in the
Owning
language.
is different than all kinds of sources.
Yeah,
of
the input,
yeah.
the interface. And that format, and I'm not sure if Shopify does something similar, but I've heard they do pods and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So do they stay on a specific area of the product? Like, are they part of?
Yes.
Okay. So in the grand scheme, if you have how do you guys break it down today for Drift? Do you have like messaging and core infrastructure?
Exactly. So you have infrastructures, core and infrastructure is a dirty word.
Yeah.
We don't like it, David especially. We have this
I
aversion.
love that. So you don't like core infrastructure.
I just don't hate it,
Why is that?
because that's where all great engineers go to die. That's really where all projects never get finished. And nothing is focused around the customer because it's infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so I battle that all the time with engineers.
I love it.
And I'm like, David is in the
Because
complete
really
extreme.
everything's a product.
Everything has to be, and so what we do is like every team has to have a goal, and the goal has to be, how does this affect the customer? And so if you're building core infrastructure, then they start saying, well, my customers are the developers in the team, and I'm like, no, we're here to serve our customer, Drift's customer, and so how are you doing that? And so I just like, yeah, we have like 3 DevOps people in the whole organization, 100 people in product.
Wow.
And it's,
And do you not like the concept of DevOps in general? Like
I
for
don't
big
either
teams?
because the way that, we were 50 in product and I did DevOps, right? I set up the Terraform initially that we would, deploy. I did all the deployment infrastructure, did all the Terraform.
To you, it's just part of becoming higher throughut for the customer.
Exactly. And so somebody owns it as their 20%, and every team at Drift deploys their own stuff.
Yeah.
They don't have to go to somewhere to ask for permission or you deploy me this SQS, you deploy me this RDS.
It's so crazy. I remember reading the Facebook engineering blogger. It's like on Facebook, it's their blog, and they're pushing to production all the time, and just incredible release cycles, which is anybody that's been doing this for a long time.
But my understanding is that Facebook is 90% infrastructure. And
that's it. And they have a lot of those dev, DevOps and building dev tools and all that stuff. So I'm not sure how they think of it but I like the concept of saying there's no core things because it's all product. It's all.
Facebook is my opposite.
Yeah.
I do think that they are, and it fascinates me, right? At that scale, when they're building containers and in data centers and that kind of stuff, that's next level stuff, right? But when you're a normal startup with just leveraging AWS. The concept of DevOps is could get really overkill, right? And so and then,
it's worth not trying to optimize. Is this running on the processor? Because they have 15,000 servers or whatever, and there's real benefit.
There's real benefit,
but
real
at
money.
Your stage, it's for most companies, it's really just about how fast can we add value to the customer.
Exactly. And just doing the right amount of work to get the most value instead of overdoing it. So now we have three because it's you have security, you have some projects, and so it's getting to a point where I'm okay with that, right?
Okay.
And but the key thing that I say to them is they have to have their own clear work. Mm-hmm. If they're protecting the systems for our customers, right, then that's fine, right? If they're SOC 2 compliance and things like that, somebody has to own that 100% of the time. Yeah. Not really be in the middle of deployment.
Yeah. And then how do you think of, when you said the demos, I believe, and I heard this from Dharmesh, and I think David brought this from Performable, you guys do a carnival, or what was it called?
Science fair.
Science fair. So
yes.
Do you guys still have that concept at Drift?
Yeah, so it's slightly different. I'm thinking maybe bringing that back, but
because my understanding, and correct me just for people listening, is essentially they had to show working code. It was maybe once a month.
Yes.
And that way nobody could just demo something that wasn't well baked or whatever. And
that was exactly. So
it might have morphed.
It morphed. We kept adding rules to that, and this is interesting. So it used to be, I think if I remember correctly, it used to be literally like a fair.
Yeah.
And posters and show what
really?
you did. Yeah, so tables. Yeah. And people could walk around and I think
science fair.
Yeah, like a science fair.
Wow.
It was called science fair.
Yeah.
But then we kind of changed that and we were do presentations.
Yeah.
And then we kept upping the controls on that because people would be showing stuff that was not available.
Yeah.
Why would you show the whole company sales and customer success and marketing?
Yeah.
Something that was in your laptop.
Yeah.
So that's where we got the rule of never demo me anything that comes from local host.
Yeah.
Right. Everything has to be demo from app.drift.com.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Because we have gating systems.
Yeah, you can gate
it. So it's if it's not there, gate it for us and don't show it.
Yeah.
And so force everybody to know learning what done means is very important.
Yeah. The definition of done. I just love the idea of saying, look, there's this thing called demos, which is this, it's kind of like Steve Jobs. I read a book, one of the engineers wrote this really great book that's not well known about, he worked on the iPhone and the keyboard and stuff. And, you get the understanding of why Steve did demos and he would sit in a room and people would present. It was very efficient. It was just he would think about it and he'd give some cues and stuff because it was the interaction, right? And I think when I see engineers show me stuff off localhost, I'm you're not thinking through the data integration. This is nice, but you're at 20%, there's 80% that needs to be done. It's such a great forcing function to get your team crystallized on, because it pulls them, right? Is that the benefit? What are your thoughts on creating an environment that you don't have to push people to get something out there, but creating a system, either culture or meeting structures that pulls or incentivize people, motivates them to do the thing you would want as a founder, which is drive this as fast as you can, right?
I think, let's try to organizes a little bit my thoughts. Usually I'm an external thinker, but
Yeah.
yes, the original question, how do you infuse culture, right? And so I started with the role modeling, and it had to be about me showing them that it is true what I'm saying, right? Which is you can ship something quickly.
Yeah.
You can ship an MVP. You can get it in front of the customers, right? What does done means? And so I coded for like 2 years, right, straight, and that is what set the tone for people to know that I wasn't just this like VP
Talker.
of engineering talking, just like, this is what I want it to be.
You
And
earn
they're
your
like,
street cred.
but like, how do we do it? And it's like me constantly, let me show you. It's possible. And then transition into what you just said, right? Which is, how do you pull it from them, right? And so we do several things. One is this notion, it started with very basic things like, don't demo me something that is not.
Yeah.
We would sit around a table at Drift on Friday, which is still what we do today. It's called show and tell, where we used to sit and everybody would project and say, this is what I worked on this week. In those days,
Is that
you
like
could
an
show.
all hand?
It was, but
Okay.
we were like 10 people, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like, this is what I worked on,
Yeah.
and you just say something, share with the team, and we just wrap up the week. Now it's not an all hands, it's show and tell, and so like teams present. Every department will volunteer someone to go tell a story, and there's a competition and a bake off.
That's cool.
Of like who wins the golden mic, based on strict stuff, storytelling. So we're teaching the whole company how to be storytellers, right?
Yeah.
You have to be on time, the clarity, the subject, why is this helpful, and so forth. So there's rules, and there's a judging panel that rotates from the whole company.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the evolution of that show and tell, where it's a little bit of a
And you're allowed to tell stories about things that are not?
no.
Okay, so it has to be
It's the same thing, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
we're carrying the same principles. So
Yeah.
it has to be done. It has to be in production. It has to be real. Do that. Then you have
It's neat because it brings an element of, I think Bezos talks about writing the press release.
exactly.
Yeah.
If you can't tell a story,
Explain it. Yeah. Like it's a cool feature, but if you can't explain the story of who it's going to help and how it's going to help them,
nobody cares.
why do we build this?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then you have this other thing that we developed. It's called the biweeklies, right? Where, as I was not coding, as I was the only person with the team, is that we have this. We meet, right? I interrupt a lot. I talk a lot. And
I'm the same way, yeah.
To control me, what they did is I asked them to make. We started this evolution because we were fascinated by messaging and video, and so we would say, make a recording of this local host. At this meeting, it's only engineers. This is the one meeting where you can bring me work in progress.
Yeah.
And so because I want to know the work in progress, and so
it has to be a recording.
But it has to be recorded because I didn't want to spend time. We didn't have that much. It's either 15 or 30 minutes with the team. And I didn't have time to wait for an engineer to set up their local host. Oh, this branch, let me switch, let me compile NPM, this Java, this stuck, Instead, record up to a 5-minute video with the product manager.
Time limits.
And so they would tell me anything they wanted, and I couldn't stop this video.
It was product manager.
Product manager, but the engineers, sometimes the engineers would do it. And so the first 5 minutes was that.
Yeah.
And then I would start talking about giving feedback, thinking through the stuff, challenges, problems, and talk about the vision, talk about a customer call, this. And so we would spend that time to really, with each team, dedicated to it. And we've been evolving that, right? And then I learned that really it's, like the coaching habit, and switch it more to is a place for them to ask me questions.
Yeah.
And to ask, are we on the right track?
Let them drive the conversation
Let
more.
them drive it. So you're totally right, is that we have to switch it. And so when you have that, it's their meeting. They have to use it wisely. They have to get the things they want to resolve that
Is
day.
it 30 minutes per
It's 30
team?
minutes per team. And
5 minutes on the video.
Absolutely. And then 25 minutes for discussion.
Yeah. So come prepare with questions.
Come prepare. And then I learned through coaching that what was the right level for me to be in that meeting, to not be getting in the weeds, right? And to be focusing on the vision, where we're going, because they need to know the why.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that goals. A big ritual now at Drift is we do quarterly goals. So we move our cadence to still meet bi-weekly.
Yeah.
That is a forcing function of like, I got to show.
Are we driving towards this outcome?
Are we doing something, right? What's the progress? But the beginning of the quarter, we start working like a month before. David and I, strategy, product leadership, and we start focusing on what's the strategy for the quarter.
Yeah.
And then we plan, and then it gets to the VP of product and the product managers, and then the teams get to work and they define their goals.
Okay.
We define the goals for the
Objectives.
department, and and they get with KPIs and timeframes.
Yeah.
And they said that, and so the beginning of the quarter, this is our fourth quarter that we've done that, and so they have that.
Yeah.
So now they're in charge. They get to drive and they get to set what
So
they want
you
to
get
accomplish.
to the author versus editor. So you get to edit, but they author, and that way they feel ownership around it.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned coaching, that you got better at this through coaching. Are you talking about like you have a coach,
Yes.
or okay? And how does that helped you as a technical leader, or just as an individual? I guess, like, what does your coaching look like? What kind of things have you worked on? What's the ROI for you?
It's two things. I've had two coaches now. I was at a Sequoia Capital event, a tool.
Yep.
Gonna want, and so Checklist Manifesto, and he gave a talk to a small group of portfolio founders, and he was talking about coaching, and because I hear everybody about coaches, I'm like David.
I've had 3 coaches.
But I'm saying I hear like all the superstars like you having coaches, and
Yeah.
I'm like, coaches, what is this?
How would it
new-
work?
What is this
Yeah.
new thing? It's a fad. Like
Yeah.
everybody has to have a coach. And he made this point that only like musicians and athletes have coaches. Nobody else has them. And like, how do we expect to get better? He goes, I'm a surgeon, and who says that I'm a surgeon? I can just get better by myself. I'm like, have lives in my hands.
It's like serious.
It's serious stuff. And like and then so he hired a coach. And what I liked about what he said is that he hired a coach that would be in the OR with him and be watching him and noticing his hands, his movement. He would bump with his head the light because he's so tall.
Yeah.
And then he would be operating in
Perspective,
darkness.
yeah.
Right. And so he was like, wow. And so he would tell him all this stuff. So that left me thinking. I made it a goal. I was like, I'm gonna go find a coach. And during my interviews, I was hiring for a VP of engineering, and in one of those, I interviewed some of the coaches, like
All the people out there. There are
psychologists and that kind of
Yeah.
like go lay down on a couch. I'm gonna
Yeah.
coach you. And I tried that. I tried talking to them, and I just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I felt too like
and they were outside the industry.
and outside the industry,
Yeah.
and they're like.
They didn't have the domain expertise, the context. Yeah.
And I met this VP of engineering, and he, I was going through that scale, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, so many teams, and it's like, I can't. hypergrowth, and he goes, yeah, you need to stop telling them, you need to start asking them. So I just like what he said to me during that interview. And at the beginning, I went and met
It's
him.
interesting. So you were looking to hire,
Yes.
and you were impressed with just his approach.
I didn't think he was going to be a fit. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had this doubts on my mind.
Yeah.
I had this, like, my first 5-second impression was like, oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But I stayed there, and I had coffee with him. And then he said that we were in the parking lot, and we just totally hit it off, right? We're just talking, but he's way more senior than me, experienced. And then he said, yes, you need to stop telling them. You need to ask them for what do they think, how they're going to do it. And that moment, it just hit me. I can't just keep doing the same way that I've always done it, especially from a scale
got you
perspective.
here won't get you there.
Exactly. And I was like, I asked him, and then he mentioned like, oh, I've been helping some companies, some consulting. I go, would you coach me? And he goes,
This happened in the parking lot.
and I said, and he goes, absolutely, right? Perfect. But I want you to come to the office. You need to be with me at these meetings. And so,
I mean, if you're Bill Campbell, $1 billion coach,
Yeah.
everybody's got to read
Trillion.
it. A trillion, yeah, sorry.
Come on.
It's fascinating.
It's
what he
fascinating.
did.
I read that book after.
Yeah.
It's so like, I wish,
Yeah.
but he came and he was in the meetings with me, and he started surveying everybody. Goes
360s,
he would come into the room, and it's like, I'm in the meeting, and I would be like, a tornado, and then he would go meet with them after, then come back. This is what they said, and my team did not hold back.
So invaluable.
Talk about
Dude, I don't know if you the book "What Got You Here Won't Get You There" by Marshall Goldsmith. I read that book when I was 28, and thought, I'm going to hire this coach. Because I had a coach, guy Bob Simpson, who did eMyth when I was 23. Like first company, I had 2 failed companies. I was like, I got to change something or I'm going to keep doing this. And to this day, it blows my mind. He replied to my email schedule because assistant schedule. Marshall Goldsmith coaches Fortune 50 CEOs. I was nobody. Canadian, blah. Anyways, he gets on the call with me. Yeah, I was just like, small town, you never heard of it.
I like that chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, and he was so kind, but the big thing I took away is what you said was the 360 interviews. Like he said, the way I coach is like this. One of the big things I do is I get feedback from the whole team because I want perspective. So like, even though he was so kind, he invited me to a workshop he did. I was asking him his fees. He laughed. He goes, the way I work is I get results and then people write me a check for what value they think that's worth. I was like, we're in a different, sorry. Like, exactly. I can't deal with that kind of pressure. But dude, just that concept of proactively getting feedback from all over, right? 360 to get that perspective. For somebody needs to see the forest from the trees. How do you think that's impacted the way you've progressed as a leader?
I was very fortunate because I feel like 360s are bullshit sometimes because people they hold back.
Yeah.
I felt like my team did not hold back with me because I'm very direct. I say everything.
Do you think it would have worked differently if they were doing survey 360s versus an individual proactively asking them that was a buffer?
Yeah, I think people were like...
Because there's a bunch of tools out there that allow you to do this, right?
I don't know.
Well, no, I'm just...
We grew too fast, right? And so I was spread thin, trying to lead a team of like 50, with no other VP of engineering. It's a VP of product and I just like sharing all this and like short technical leads. It was rough, right? And I appreciated the team living through that, and I think he came at the right time, where they kind of and by seeing him as a CTO, a VP of engineering, I think that they felt comfortable.
Yeah,
and he understood them.
Yeah,
right. And he also was helping me, was doing coaching on this at the same time, helping them. And so I think that I was able to get like a lot of raw feedback. Elias, it's too much here. It's too much here. It's like too in the weeds. We need division. Help us with this. Let's not waste.
So you obviously grew in a shorter period. What do you think what was the fast tracking? Like if you think of like, if I didn't have him, I would have learned these harder. I mean, did he compress?
Oh yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's just like you I
like
might have
3 or 4 years.
ever gotten that.
Yeah, you may have never discovered some of this stuff.
And so like that whole flip and that whole delegation. And so to the point that, just learning to be comfortable of trusting, of listening. We went through the coaching habit together. My one-on-ones, he would attend my one-on-ones as well. Mm-hmm. He gave me this quadrant where we have the objectives. So the goals are now like, pervading the whole organization, right? Yeah. And so like you have a quadrant where there's a slide in Google Slides and it has on the top left, what are your objectives? Win my one-on-ones, right? My direct reports. On the right, what did you do this week? On the bottom left, then it's like, what are you going to do next week? And then on the bottom right is what are your challenges? And we really focus most of the one-on-one on the challenges.
Yeah.
Where it's not
but you get alignment on...
Yeah, just making sure what are you working on, what are you doing, as opposed to like, what did you do? Are you doing?
Yeah, just open, free-form question with no direction. Sounds like you don't do well with that. I'm the same way. I want an agenda. I want structure.
I mean, I can shoot the shit
for
a little.
But it's just like you don't want. Yeah, is it productive?
Is it productive? And now it's like, what are your challenges? And so that teaches my direct reports to like bring their challenges. I want to talk to you about this. When are we going to get this done? Ladders. When we resolve this? What about my career? Where I am? Are you happy with my performance? And so be able to build that relationship.
So that's interesting. So you will ask them, when you say, are you happy with my
bring
performance?
That.
Okay, but are they asking for your feedback on their performance?
Yes.
Or do you give them permission? Do you ask them for, hey, what do you need most from me? Or how am I showing up as a leader?
That's what this quadrant is.
Okay, perfect.
This is what does my vice president need?
Wow.
This is like, what problem do you personally have that I can help you with?
It's a poll. Wow.
Yeah, it's like if they don't, by the way, if they don't send me that the day before, we don't have a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of working with, fully formed adults is that you're like, this is the agreement.
Yeah.
I will dedicate this hour to you.
It's the SLA.
And so whatever you bring in there, my job, instead of me rambling about anything, we're going to talk about what's on your bullets. And so I'm mechanical now.
Yeah.
Immediately go to the bottom right of the quadrant, project it on the screen, on the one-on-one, or I look it up on my phone. let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one. And when I have 6 items there, it controls me how much we spend on each.
Yeah.
Because I want to go through all of them.
You got 40. You can just do the math.
You can do the math. And so you go boom, 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 boom. And so that he changed that, right? And so that's something that then I said to David, you should try. And so and now David tried it.
Yeah, I remember reading some stuff about one-on-ones that he was talking about.
No, but I'm saying the coach too.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so now we've been using him and leveraging with other executives in the company.
Yeah.
And so that's been because we provide that for growth.
I know Shopify had a whole executive development coaching team.
Exactly.
For all their, and essentially star players got a coach. They had a talent management team, and it was just part of the way they wanted to perform.
It's very valuable. I mean, it's when you focus on growing people and you want to build a company like this, right? Yeah. It's like you got to help and give them the resources. Because
what are things that you're doing today that you didn't do when you started that you think people need to consider and start? Let's call it $1 million to $5 million in ARR. Is it the offsites, quarterly strategies, one-on-ones? What are some of the things that you would do earlier?
So this is this is what I spend most of my time really. I don't know if this is a good name or not, but I'm from the beginning we've been calling it the company OS, right?
Yep.
The operating system.
I call it that. It's a great name.
We run.
Yeah,
right?
We're both technical. That we want. It's the machine that everything runs on.
And so we become Patrick Lencioni, right?
Incredible author.
Incredible, right?
Yeah.
And so
dysfunctional as a team.
Dysfunctional
all
team,
that. Yeah.
Organization, right?
Yeah.
And so we're
The advantage.
I was we have to, David and I, we agree, disagree. We always, people think it's so clear, but David hates meetings, right? But from Patrick, I'm no, we need meetings. And
it's the only tool you have.
It's the only tool we have. And so we have to get good at it.
Good at meetings, yeah.
And so we have a weekly senior leadership meeting, right?
Those happen on Mondays?
Happen on Mondays.
Yeah.
They used to
happen on Fridays? Yeah.
They used to be on Fridays.
I always tell people switch them back.
At 5 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
It was 4 to 5. We would do that. It's early days. You got to we don't have time any other time. So we would do it. And those were painful. It was painful because we were not as good and organized. And so
they can go long.
And they go long. And then $1 trillion coach, and everybody was giving me feedback. It's time. We're grown-ups. Let's just go. So it's a 1 on Mondays. Mm-hmm. And you make the time.
Yep.
That's the beauty of it.
Yep. Locking the big rocks.
Monday, 1 o'clock. We have Monday metrics at 9:30 in the morning on Mondays for the whole company, 15 minutes. Just like a little kickstart. What's the plan? 4 o'clock. We actually, for the summer, it was 3 o'clock, 3 to 4 on Fridays. Show and tell for the whole company.
That's a nice way to bookend the week.
Bookend the week. Done. Beginning and end. Then we do quarterly company meeting.
Yep.
We used to have it monthly. Yep. We just switched to quarterly.
Yeah, quarterlies.
And a celebration after go.
Yeah. And with your executive leadership team?
No, with the whole company.
Okay, but do you do the exec offsite and then present?
There's 2 offsites.
Yeah.
There's the ELT. Yeah. Just a few of us.
Yeah,
with
David,
6,
7 people.
4 or 5 people. Yeah, exactly.
Executive leadership team. Yeah.
CFO, CRO, that kind of stuff.
And everybody comes with their plan, edit it.
And we have an agenda for that one.
Lock
That's
and load.
a quarterly offsite.
Yeah.
That is just,
is that
we
a
go
1
to
day
a
or
conference
2
room.
day?
1 day. Conference room, we just go close to the office.
Okay, but it is, I think it's important to do outside of the office.
Yeah, we rent another, we go to our
it's
lawyer's
worth
office.
Investing. Yeah, just get out of your office, different space, clears the mind. Yeah.
After that meeting is the SLT, which is about 18, 20 of us.
Senior leadership team.
And we go for an offsite, actually out 2 days. So what we usually do is we'll go in the afternoon, leave in the afternoon, have dinner, hang out.
Yeah.
And then a whole day of session.
Yeah.
And so that's the quarterly.
So in the early days, you can just do the ELT type thing.
Exactly. It used to be 1.
Yeah.
But now we split.
Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
Because really this is about us coming together and bonding. Really, it's sometimes with 20 people, you cannot get that much work done. But it's about alignment, communication, relationships, and helping us alignment. And so we do that, and that is... and that in itself has different cadences, right? Mm-hmm. Because that quarterly offsite will be like this one that we're about to have is preparation for 2020, right? And the other ones have different. And then the first one is how we kicked off the year.
Yeah, and do you do the yearly sets off Q1, and then you do, so it's the bigger one at the end of the year, planning for the year. Because it's you look back the year, look forward. And then in regards to like monthly or weekly cadences, again, 1 to 5 million. What are like? Because I really like your bi-monthly product one.
Product meeting. Yeah, you have to.
That sounds so like.
I think everything that we're doing, you should have.
Yeah,
it's just maybe a smaller version. You might not need 2 offsites.
Yeah,
you do one.
Yeah,
like David and I, one of our advisors, when we were 10 people, did an offsite. We went to New Hampshire, and 2 days, and that's where we pivoted into, not pivoted, but like made the switch back to messaging to what Drift is today. That was the result, the outcome of an offsite.
Yeah.
Where we spent time, and I kind of hate like some of that brainstorming and sticky stuff, but we were like, because we did a lot of exploration at the beginning of Drift and looked at different.
I mean, that's one thing. Just that when I think of performable, like you guys are really good at that. David's really good at that, of just exploring a problem space and like iterating, MVPing, but then once it's boom, go.
We did that. We did like 6 or 7
projects. I don't
projects.
think, like I've seen a lot of teams do that. Most of them just keep iterating until they run out of time and money because they can't commit. But you guys are so good at finding it and then go.
Or you commit very early and you're stubborn and you're stuck. And a lot of VCs would be like telling us, I'm so glad you did what you do, that you scrapped that idea and you moved on, because I have so many people that are like stubborn. It's so hard as an entrepreneur. Like, how do you give up, right?
Yeah.
'Cause you think that you can't give up, and so like you stick with something, and everybody knows that it's clearly the wrong thing. So we did a lot of that, but it was that offsite, and that really is what brought me around too, of like, that time and the stickies and the alignment and all that kind of stuff. And we came out of there, and it was like, and it was an amazing event. The 3 of us, and so it's one of our advisors too, and he flipped me. I'm kind of like the stubborn, like the skeptic. Classic engineer. I hate that. This thing is so stupid.
Yeah, by default,
blah, blah, blah.
This is bad. Yeah.
And this guy turned me around, and we did an exercise where we said 3 years, I think it was something like that, 3-year goals where we're like, we want to be known for the best culture in Boston. We want to be named as a competitor by a public company. We want to have, I don't know if it was like 10 million or something ARR.
Yeah, big heritage.
Big, just all kinds of stuff. We said all these things in there, and product 100 drifters. It was like viral product. I forget. It was like and we crushed all of those goals, and we pulled out the Google Doc from that day and we showed it at a company meeting. It was like there was 3 of us in a room. Maybe 8 in total in the company. And we wrote out those things, and then they came true. If you don't write it,
Doesn't come true.
And so those offsites are for that.
So critical.
It's like just, so I would do all those things again. And then there's one more thing that could be a whole nother hour of conversation, is what I'm calling engines.
Yeah.
So everything needs to be an engine at Drift.
Yeah.
And we have,
it's all about throughput.
A collection of processes that help you achieve an outcome repeatedly.
Yeah.
Right. And so that whole thing that you said, of like, oh, why is that not working? What happened? That's not shipped. This is, all those questions that I would ask that would help me unstuck a team. I want every team to know how to unstuck themselves. And so the process is 4 questions. What could happen? I want you to think about the goal. What problem you're solving, the goals,
So you're teaching
challenges.
them the way to think the way you thought.
Yes. It's systematic thinking, right?
Yeah, systematic.
This is like Bridgewater, Ray Dalio principle stuff, right? And in fact, I hired someone from the work, reported to Dalio.
Wow.
And brought in, and she started a company on this, right? So you hit me up, right?
Yeah.
And I incubated that company inside Drift to create these processes. And we defined it as 4 simple questions. What could happen? What should happen? That's the list.
Yeah.
The process.
Yeah.
What is happening? Mm-hmm. So you have to show visibility of like, what is the thing doing, right? Yeah. And then the last one's what did happen. And
what's the difference between?
Is what is happening, is visibility. Show me. It's kind of like, an engine in a car, like you see the gauges. Okay, we're moving, speed, oil, temperature, it's working.
That's is.
What did happen is when you get to your destination, when you land your jet into the runway, you're like, okay, let's talk about what happened. Was that a good landing or a bad landing?
Okay, got it. Is the system working?
Did we follow the steps or no? It was the outcome it was not. Okay, so where was the breakdown? And then start doing the root cause analysis.
Yeah.
And then you go back and try the whole thing again, right?
Yeah.
Well, root cause is a little bit different the way Dalio does it, right?
Okay.
Dalio is like, it starts with, the 5 whys is like, I would hate 5 whys because engineers would be like, so why? So why? And it was never a person.
I've never liked 5 whys either.
There's never like a person. It's always been like, it's the code.
Yeah.
It's the code it needs to be refactored. It needs to be rewritten.
Yeah.
And with Dalio is like, who?
Yeah, what was the thinking?
No, who?
Who
was responsible for that? Okay. And so it's in Dalio is like, it's always either a people problem, a process problem, or a people and process problem. And so then you go, okay, who did that?
Yeah. Why did he do that?
Why did that person do it?
Yeah.
Lack of training.
Yeah.
Lack of discipline. We have to get to the bottom. Because if we brush that aside, we're just focusing on the process, but not really
solving the problem.
That's not solving the problem. And so we need to help. If the person needed more training, if the person has been working too hard, if it's too many pages have been going on, we need to help that individual and uncover that. Instead of just like, it's the code, or something like that.
And does your whole team kind of map that down into their direct reports in regards to one-on-ones?
That's the ongoing effort right now.
That's the OS.
But it's like we're evolving that, and I just did a video for the leadership team where basically I want everything at Drift to be an engine.
Yeah.
Customer onboarding, lead SLA, demos, medic, deployment, goals. We have an engine for goal setting that says 4 weeks before the beginning of the quarter, strategy team does this, then product leadership team does this, then the team does the goals, then they get signed
because once
off.
you have that, then you can refine it. If you don't have that, then there's no way to improve it.
Exactly. And so now, I'll show you later, I have a graph where like I have a slides where you can start seeing the goal of the company, then 4 goals, let's say revenue, marketing, success, and product, right? And then you're like, each one of those has engines.
Yeah.
And then each one of those has engines and ways to report that.
And it rolls up.
Because I want everything. It's like, what happens is that people, when they're growing, they're always looking, the founders, for like that, oh, there's that guy I want to hire that did this amazing,
he's going to solve
has
all
the
my
playbook
problems.
for me.
Yeah. They're going to, like the VP of sales is going to come in, he's going to deploy a whole outbound, whatever it is you're building. Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But most people don't have that systems thinking.
Yeah.
And so like what they're deploying is like, how does it fit your organization?
Yeah.
Instead, what I want is just the ability to, what problem do we have? Mm-hmm. And let's go try the first version of it.
And what are your thoughts on the dashboards or metrics that you guys like?
It's been hard. It's
going to evolve, right?
It evolves,
and you're learning different ratios, metrics. You're trying to shorthand it. There's different systems you got to pull in. But like in regards to maybe on a weekly or monthly, like do you guys do?
Yes, we have tons of that stuff, but it's like I'll show you a little bit of my new set of dashboards. It's complicated because this is where like some of the senior leadership teams go wrong, the meetings, because it's like we don't like the slides and we ask a million questions and how do you present that and how do you give insights? Is this a true visibility into how the engine is running? And so like,
especially if they're choosing the numbers.
If they're choosing the numbers or like the inconsistency or every team
or it's not measured. Yeah. Even just agreeing on how the number gets created. What
does it mean? Don't change it. And it's usually there's like a number, but the data is dirty or this, and it doesn't include this. And it's just like, oh, God,
so hard.
So hard.
But that to me is the optics that, that's where you need that to be able to
run
have the
blind.
Conversation. I mean, it's so crazy how like one of the theories, the consensus I have is like in that weekly meeting, you should have essentially everybody update the numbers for their area of the business and be connected to the numbers. Like Absolutely. I feel like automated dashboards sometimes disconnects the owners from it. So I like to manually go into the system, pull it out, check it, right? Yeah. The owners check it.
I just met with someone that is in operations for a small startup, right? And she was asking me, like, what should I do? And I went into this whole engines thing. And she says, is it too early, OKRs and that kind of stuff? And I said, not really. It's like...
Just do a light version of it.
There's a light version, but it's like, if you're going to, you don't have resources, you're 10 people, 15 people, and it's like, if you're going to do something, better write it down, better say, what am I doing? What am I accomplishing? How do I know this is working? and not abandon it. Like, especially when you're doing like, user acquisition stuff or that. You can't say like, I have this landing page and this microsite and not look at it.
Yeah, you have like checkbox, funnels done, but then you never look at the performance of it.
Yeah. And
you
so
move on to the next project.
Why did you do that? And so just that, the first question of the engines, what could happen is what are the challenges? What happens if nothing changes? What happens if it goes wrong? What could go wrong? What is the goal? What is the number? Can we measure it, right? Does just that, slow down for a moment. Just think.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Instead of like, oh, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Elias, you've obviously grown quite a bit since I first met you, building these companies and leading these teams. Looking back, who do you feel you needed to become to be the person sitting here and leading this size of organization and, founding such an incredible company?
I don't know. I just enjoy learning, and David has grown a lot too, but he had a lot more startup experience than I had, right? When I was doing Performable with him as my first time co-founding something, I was so stressed. I was like down in the gutter. I mean, like literally sick, Sometimes you have to fire someone. You have to make a tough decision. You're dealing with a customer canceling. I remember, just feeling distraught. My hair was a mess. I was just like, I was destroyed. Starting a company is hard.
Super hard.
And David was like so much more like, polished and even keeled.
Yeah.
And like, he just has it all together. And so I kind of I was like, wow, I need 10 years to be able to be like that. And so I would say him was one of them. But now I joke around. I'm reading Good Prophet, Charles Koch. I don't know if you read that.
One,
oh
no.
my God, it's
good?
insane.
Done.
Yeah. And so it's like, and I'm like over the weekend, and I'm sending him pictures now, like pages, photos of pages, like we just send back and forth. And I said, this is amazing. This is just keeps evolving me, right? And he goes, I'm so glad I'm reading so much more. And he's like, you were not ready before, now you're ready, right? And so I think that now I'm reading, and I'm just like being able to digest a lot more of what is in these books, right?
You can appreciate it.
I can appreciate what it's saying.
The student is ready.
Yeah, and so it's like, so who am I becoming? I don't know. I don't have like one specific individual, but I just love different things from different people. Like I just watch Bill Gates,
So good.
the Netflix stuff.
Gates' mind.
Oh, it's like,
dude, those thinking weeks.
Think weeks. I just told David, I texted him like,
hey,
let's just do think weeks, but maybe together, because I just talk a storm with him. But I'm like, the bag of books, you know, and I'm like, so I was like thinking weeks. So Bill Gates, Bezos, the system thinking of what he has. Very few companies have systems like this at this size, right? But every day, like I've hired people from there, like top technical leaders from Amazon. They work for me now, and they're like, Elias, I would spend 2 to 3 days writing many versions of this press releases to go up the chain until
to get approved.
It would take 6 months for Bezos to read one of my things.
Yeah.
And so like, obviously that sounds to me like overkill, like crazy.
Yeah.
But
what's the essence of that?
With Coke is a market-based management, and he's talking about the systems and like how he's obsessing about how people present, and Coke is talking about like I don't even know how to say his name. Coke. And so like he's talking about most companies die because they don't innovate. And they don't move fast. And they don't realize that the ground underneath them is shaking. It's shifting. It's just crumbling. And so if you don't accept that and you don't move, you will be eaten, alive by the next competitor. And so that obsession, I'm like, yes. And the systems to make sure that doesn't happen is really what I'm doing at Drift. It's like I would move fast and code it and show it. How do we document this in a way that everybody understands how we move quickly at Drift, right? And it has to be encoded into our DNA forever to build a long-lasting company.
How do people get a hold of you?
Twitter.
And what's your handle?
Elias T. Eliast.
Check it out. They can reach out. You had the girl from Bridgewater, the woman you mentioned. You can connect people if they're interested. She's check out the books. Everybody. Genius. I know we dropped a lot of quick terms. Lencioni, Cialdini. There's just so many great authors. Sounds like they've really inspired your thinking. I really appreciate you, man. It's been a great conversation. Thanks, man. Thanks for watching this episode of Escape Velocity. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with your biggest insight from our conversation. Be sure to check out the next episode.